Today's special guest played Division III soccer for Principia, and Principia may sound familiar. We had Peyton Sellers on here a couple months back from a basketball player there. She is now, I guess you would call a social media influencer. She's popular on TikTok. I see her all the time. Welcome to the show, Viv Castro. How you doing, Viv?
I'm good. That was the intro. Like I'm still getting used to the TikTok part of it because
Mhm.
I don't think influencer. I think like content creator maybe because
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
creating content, but I'm like, am I influencing people? I don't know.
134,000 followers is influencing somebody, I'm sure. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. But no, we I have questions today. It's just me today. No Zach. He has a bunch of family coming down. He's in Florida, and you're in New York right now, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, I was actually in
All right.
Florida a few weeks ago, so I'm jealous of him that he's in that weather. But
And then I'm in Missouri, still in like the fluctuating weather where it's cold one day and now it's hot, and yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I have questions from childhood, like we like to ask our athletes all their childhood, their family background, but also their playing career. And then for you, it's a little different since you're a content creator. I have to reach that side of things too. So let's start with your family life and your background because I believe there's some Brazilian background, correct?
Yes. 100, so I'm 100% Brazilian. Both my parents. So my mom came to the US to New York when she was 23, which is my age. And then my dad came to the US when he was 19. And then they didn't know each other. My dad's best friend growing up was actually my mom's cousin. And they didn't meet until they came to New York, which is crazy. And then, yeah, they started, I guess, a family here. So I have an older brother. He's turning 27, and I have a younger sister. Um, who is from my dad's second marriage. But yeah, we're all Brazilian babies and we all speak
Wow.
Portuguese.
Wow. So you're completely fluent in the language.
Yes. Okay. So on my TikTok, everyone's like, so you're not fluent because there are some words that like they ask me to pronounce and I pronounce it. But I'd say maybe like 96% fluent
Okay.
because I make grammar mistakes in English and I was born
Yeah, of
here. So
course.
like of course I'm gonna make mistakes in any language.
Definitely.
Um, but I would say, yeah, I'm fluent. I think when I go to Brazil, like when you're immersed in that environment of the language, like you speak it a little freer and like the way natives speak it.
Hmm.
Um, so I always love like going back to Brazil and speaking Portuguese there, how people say it there.
So growing up in your household, was it English? Was it Portuguese? What did they speak?
I think until we got a little older, it was only Portuguese. I mean, I think Portuguese was my first language because obviously, like, I'm at home before I'm at school.
Yeah.
And actually, when 9/11 happened, so I live like before all these buildings, I'm like looking out into New York. Before
Uh-huh.
all these buildings were constructed, we could see the Freedom or the World Trade Center from our window. And so when that happened, we moved to Brazil and came back in 2003, I think. So my brother did kindergarten and first, or maybe he did first grade there at kindergarten, and I was just like there in nursery. So yeah, I like lived there for a year, but that's like
Wow.
the only kind of experience of living, which I don't even remember.
Yeah. New York's different though. Like for me being from Missouri, I can't even imagine what it's like. I'm sure you love it, right?
I do love it. I think I've learned to appreciate it more as I've gotten older. So I don't know if like Peyton told you, but we went to obviously print upper school together, but I was a boarding student and he was a day student. And so like the suburban life was like new to me. Like I didn't have Taco Bell or like Chick-fil-A or like any of those oh my God, canes. Like I didn't have any of that till I went to the Midwest for high school. And then I was like obsessed with the suburban life. And I was like, I love going to the mall on weekends and I love like going to football games and like, because you don't get really those things in the city in New York.
Hmm.
And then when I went to college in Elsa, Illinois, you're like, there's nothing really here. And then I was like,
Yeah.
it's New York. So now I'm like, I love New York, but I like still cherish like the suburbs.
Right on. No, yeah, you got a little bit of the best of both worlds, it sounds like.
Mhm.
Uh I kind of want to reach a little bit to your soccer background now. So did you play 4 or 5 years
I
of
at the college,
college? Yeah.
I only played 3 seasons, so I technically
Okay.
have more eligibility to play in college.
Okay.
But I think I have hung the boots up. I think I'm
Okay.
done.
I
But yeah,
gotcha.
freshman year I didn't play. Sophomore year I played. Junior year was COVID. And then senior year, like my first senior year, and then my second senior year. So
Okay.
three.
The COVID thing's messing me up still because I see all these athletes that I follow that they're like a fifth year senior and they still have another year from this COVID
Yeah.
year. It's really messing me up.
It's like if you started your season during COVID, then you get that season back. So like, because I had originally thought I had an extra 2 years of eligibility. So like one for the fourth and then a COVID year. But because we didn't have a legitimate season, then I'm not allowed to play a COVID year. So if you played like actual, if you literally played, then you get that COVID year.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha. So playing wise, did you have anybody, I guess role model, but anybody that influenced you playing wise? It could be a women's player, a men's player. Yeah.
um, well, it's kind of funny. So I didn't start playing soccer until I got into high school. So when I was 14, so I did gymnastics until 14, like 6 times a week. Like that was, I was gonna go to like literally I was gonna go to college for gymnastics. Like when I was
Mm.
12, like we knew that like that was gonna be my future. And then when I went to boarding school, I gave that up because it was just too much and I want to try something new. But I would say that like, and I fight with my brother literally all the time. But my brother has been a big inspiration to me with
Okay.
playing soccer because he played growing up. Like while I was at club gymnastics, he was at club soccer. And then I watched him play in high school. He played a little bit in college. I went to his like recruiting camps when he was going into college. Like at Rutgers, like I was sitting there watching his like recruitment like camp, and I'm just like sitting there. I'm like, so I would say he was a big like inspiration for me. Yeah, yeah. His name's Victor. So
Okay.
shout out.
Right on. That's so interesting. The last guest we had, I don't know how familiar you are with the Missouri area because you were only here a couple of years, correct?
Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty familiar.
Missouri Valley College is a school between Kansas City and Columbia. It's a NAIA school. I spent 1 year there playing college basketball. We had one of my teammates on a couple weeks ago, and I find it so interesting that he did the same thing as you. You guys started playing your college sport when you were like 14 or 15.
Mhm.
Like that's unbelievable to me that in 3 or 4 years you picked up enough of it to play in college.
Yeah, I always tell people like I felt like soccer was kind of in my blood, especially being Brazilian. I mean,
Mhm.
like soccer is literally everywhere. I mean, obviously everywhere in every country, but like in Brazil, like you literally just see people playing on the streets, no
Yeah.
shoes. Like it's just like so wholesome, I guess there. It's like
Mhm.
so simple when people play there. And I think that like also kind of inspired me. Like I felt like I always wanted to try another sport when I did gymnastics, but I literally couldn't. Like I would go to school, come home at like 3:15. I'd practice at 5 and like I would told my mom I did my homework during the day for like an hour, had a snack, went to practice, finished at 9, got home at 9:30, and then like had chalky hands while I had dinner, and then I go to bed. So like I had this cycle for so many years and I was like craving to do another sport. And I think that's why I was able to put like so much motivation in high school to playing because I was like, I've wanted this for so long and now I like get to actually try this sport that I've wanted to. And
Yeah.
like, I'm just like grateful that I got to like pick it up.
How does soccer compare here when you played? I know you play in college here compared to New York, but the soccer scene, what does it look like here compared to New York?
Um, honestly, like I'm not very familiar with like I didn't even like I never watched any of the MLS teams. I didn't even know we had a New York MLS team until like 2 years ago. Or like
Yeah,
the NWSL. Like I was so out of the loop with like professional soccer. Like I'm a big basketball girl and I don't play basketball.
love
And
that.
yes, I love that you play basketball. It's super cool. And so like I just wasn't familiar. Like I'm a big Knicks fan. Like
Okay.
so like, but don't quiz me because I'm not like watching
Oh
every
yeah, I got you.
but I'm not very like familiar with it. I'm only familiar with like watching like my brother's club practices when I was like 6 years old.
Wow, interesting. Because I would have thought New York would be, because obviously New York's huge. I would have thought New York would be like a massive soccer, because soccer is massive here, and I had no idea until really recently when we got our city team here.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
that's so cool.
everywhere. Like it's literally like as a sports podcast, I've never been a big soccer guy. I've always been basketball first and
Yeah.
baseball. I've had to really dive into the soccer world a little bit more, and World Cup obviously helped with that. Because I think
I
that
feel
brought a lot of
I feel like St. Louis is just like I mean something that I appreciate about St. Louis is like it's just such like their sports teams like they go hard.
yes.
Like the Cardinals, the Blue like oh my God. Like I've never been to a Rangers game and I've been to so
Uh-huh.
many Blues games. Like I've never been to a Actually, I've been to a Yankees game when I was like 5, but I've been to
Mhm.
many Cardinals games. Like I feel like in St. Louis, like you eat and breathe your cities, like your team.
Yes. Yes.
And New York is maybe like New York is like that too, because obviously like I follow our New York teams on social media and stuff. And like Knicks games are like electric, but
Hmm.
it's I feel like because there's so many people doing so many different things and New York is such a melting pot that there are people that don't give a crap about sports. But I feel like in St. Louis, even if you didn't play sports growing up, like you are a diehard like Blues fan until you die. I don't know
No,
if you agree with that, if you agree with that or not, but
oh, completely. I think that's extremely well said. I grew up like bleeding blue for the Blues and bleeding red for the Cardinals. I mean, it's just like in our blood almost. And I think that same thing with like LA, for example, where there's so much going on that I feel like the sports teams don't get. Is that kind of what you're referring to with New York?
yeah, yeah. It's just like everyone's like in their own world. And like when you kind of were talking about soccer, I think when I think of soccer, I think of a lot of like European and like Latin culture, like Latin America and South America. And I feel like when I see like for example, like NYCFC or like, the Red Bulls, like when I see their fan base, it's very much like I mean, this is obviously generalizing, but like it's more of a like a not the typical American white person at a game. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
people from all different races, all different cultures. And I feel like soccer is just that way. And
Yes.
I think like I love where I grew up in Manhattan, but like my neighborhood isn't I feel like it's not very diverse, and that's something that hopefully I'll get more of when I'm older. But like I think that's another reason why I wasn't very much in the like MLS soccer
Yes.
life kind of thing.
Yes.
I don't know.
You're what's the word I'm looking for?
Transitioning?
Transitioning, yes. You're transitioning perfect into my next question here, because I'm very um proud and I take a lot of pride in diversity and meeting new cultures and meeting new people. And that's why I love your content, because you're meeting people from all over the place. I mean,
Yeah, thank you.
how cool is that? Um, so I'm a huge fan of women's sports, all women's sports, basketball, soccer, whatever. Huge fan. My fiance played college basketball. I'm
Yeah.
watching the
If you
I'm
have kids,
watching
you have little basketball babies.
yes, and her dad's 7 foot tall, so and she's like 5'8", so like we got some
Wow.
future there.
Good
But
genes.
but no, like I'm a huge fan of women's sports. I'm watching the women's national tournament right now, basketball, and I'm just all in on it. I've seen this national tournament for the women's side gain a lot more traction than in past years.
Yeah.
But I still don't think we are where we need to be when it comes to women's sports. So in your mind, what can we do to kind of further the women's game?
Well, I mean, firstly, like it's really important, I think, that people recognize that there's more to do. Because I feel like anytime we make progress, we're like, yeah, progress. And we forget that there's so much more to do. And
Mhm.
with literally with any issue in our world. Um, but I don't know if you knew, but I actually used to have a women's sports podcast. And
I saw that. I was going to
okay.
mention that later.
And I
Yeah.
like kind of I took it out of my bio because I put my TikTok in. And
Hmm.
I would say like recently I haven't been as invested or as like up to date with like women's sports just because I've been super focused on like my TikTok and like those things.
Hmm.
But to answer your question, I think that something, and maybe you've heard about this, but like when we talk about women's sports, like we emphasize women and like the W so hard. And
Yeah.
it's such like the men's sports and like any just putting men in front of sports, like that is not the default in
Hmm.
sports. And I think we kind of assume that when we talk, like, how long did it take March Madness to put the MBB in the Instagram? Like, I think it took until like last year, or like, let's talk, like the weight room situation. Like, obviously, we don't have to
Yes.
rehash, but like, it's still things that happened. And to think that someone even like thought in their mind, like, let me put like maybe like 5 pound weights for women because they're women. And then for our stars, let's like rack things up and like put things in for them. So I think first it starts with differentiating that the default is not the man's sport, that you can say men's March Madness and you can say women's March Madness.
Hmm.
And trust me, like the athletic department at my school probably hates me because I like I just like got into it a lot my senior
Yeah.
year, and not hates me, but like they know that I will talk about it if something's wrong. But like, for example, like our men's soccer team soccer handle or Instagram handle was Principia Soccer until this year. And I didn't even recognize that it was that until I
Hmm.
started to open my eyes to these things in women's sports. And then I like reached out to the coach and I was like, look, like, can you please change your handle? Like, this is something that's really important to us. And it took some pushing, not because they didn't want to do it, but for them to realize how much I think it affected us.
Hmm.
Um, and so, I mean, before I go into my second point, like you can, because you have probably something to say about that, but like, what do you think about like the whole like men's and women's and like differentiating the two?
As a man, I feel like I'm very a man from Missouri, a white male from Missouri. I feel like I'm very different in my thinking than the majority of people in my life. And on a serious note, like me and my fiance have plans of moving even up north to Canada in the future, just to try something new. And for me, it's something I get pretty triggered at, honestly. When men view women as lesser, or um, when women's sports, let's for basketball, for example, women don't dunk as much as men.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean like men's. I understand like people would say men are more entertaining because they more athletic in certain situations, more powerful. But for me as a basketball fan, I'm sitting here the other night watching the women's game thinking it's harder because they're not as physically
Exactly.
dominant. Um,
And
so
to
I
that point, sorry to cut you off, but like to
oh
that
yeah.
point, I had a Division 1 basketball player come on my podcast like a year ago. She plays at Notre Dame. She played at UT, then she went to Notre Dame. And she said that the number one misconception that she feels is that like that they're less athletes than men.
Mm-hmm,
There. I'm a woman.
mm-hmm, yeah,
And she was like, if anything, we have to put in double the work because we're not biologically the same. And like we always go back to that like biological difference, biological difference. Yes, we know that that's there. And it's never people like they're not going to deny that unless, you're very ignorant. But like if anything, you're putting in that work so much harder to be like what like I don't even know, squatting 300 pounds or whatever it is. Like it just takes that extra notch to do it.
mm-hmm,
And then once like women's athletes are like up with a man athlete, then they're like, oh, she's a good athlete. Oh, she beat
yeah,
that guy in basketball. Oh, now she's
yeah,
good,
yeah.
you know? It's like ridiculous.
A major issue I have personally as a man, um, is when women thrive in sports and then I'll just say I don't want to call anybody out, but people in my life,
Mhm.
um, that are men take that almost like they're insulting us,
Yeah.
which I have a huge problem with because, like you said earlier, like changes in our whole nation. Um, Something great happens and then we feel like it's done or it's over. Like women's sports is a lot better now than what it was when it started, but like it's not just we don't just stop it now. Like there's more to keep going with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like the I think we can also I think I've like learned a lot in like educating myself with anything because I used to get like really angry with people that didn't understand something so simple in my eyes, right? Like we think it's simple to understand, but it's also like having the patience and like meekness in a way to like you're planting a seed. Like you don't need them to understand what you're saying in that moment. You just need them to understand why you feel that way. And when I made that like text to the head men's coach at my school, the soccer coach, I didn't need him to like necessarily text me back and saying, "No worries, we're going to change it right now." That's not what he said. It's I just needed him to recognize why I needed him to change it,
Yes.
even if it took a few weeks, because it's not necessarily like it's just all you want is like for people to like understand what you're saying. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's really not that hard.
No, definitely. No, I actually love that you did that. I saw something recently with women's announcers. If you
Mm,
go through Instagram, you're gonna see hate no matter where you go. But like comments are just so hateful because of her voice or whatever it is. I think it was a hockey NHL announcer. A couple days later, it's like a little girl that she got to meet that was like wanting to be an announcer. It's like you ever know who you're impacting um through these things. So like certain situations where a guy doesn't like the sound of a woman's voice on announcing, like she's a voice for a lot of like little girls that want to be that
totally.
growing up. It's
Yeah,
I don't know.
because they're not thinking about everyone else, they're just thinking about themselves.
So what was that second point that you had?
Okay, so I think a lot about like just like giving things a chance.
Mhm.
So in women's sports and in life in general, like the more I think you invest in something, you like do get a return, hopefully. And I actually learned this also from like a professor and someone who is like in the women's sports world, played basketball in college, like is anyways, like doing this like the I say like educational or like um I don't think the word is philosophy. Maybe. I don't know. Anyways, she talked to me about this, and it's really important that people invest in women's sports and women athletes. And when you invest, you like get that return. And it's just like a lot of people don't think they're going to get a return when they like invest, I think, in women's sports. And again, like this is like this idea came from someone that like taught me this. And like she had like all these numbers that she was showing me. And like it's just so important that like if we like want something to do well, like don't we put money and work into things that we want to do well? So then people have to be willing to do the work and to put money and sweat and into women's sports. And I think it's taken a lot of that. And we see like I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think the numbers for March Madness views were like are more than like 40% than last year. And that might even be too low. It might even be higher. But like everyone's like, no one's watching. And it's like, dude, that's such a lie. Like people do watch, and like we're not even gonna get to like women's soccer because that didn't make any sense. Because if we're gonna talk about how many attendance, like who's attending this game and who's attending this game, women's soccer was bringing in more attendance and they were still getting paid less. And so I think it's just like people actually realizing that like women athletes are real and like they're going to give you a return if you just give them a chance.
What I love about you is that you're very vocal about these issues too, because I we can't even off from sports, there's a lot of issues going on that uh, when we get quiet about it, that's when it kind of it just continues. And so I love that about you, that you're being that voice.
And
Um,
also, like, it just because it doesn't directly affect you doesn't mean you can't like advocate for it.
yep,
And
exactly.
like, it's huge. And like you were saying, like, yeah, you're a man and you still watch women's sports and you still, it doesn't always have to be like us, like women athletes constantly like begging for people to like come to games and like to support us. And like it can come from the other people. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to directly be from women athletes. Like you can be like, yo, like
Yep.
let's go to the game and be like, shut up, they're good.
I've sadly lost I've lost friends, I've lost family members, I've lost um people that I care about because I have these feelings about these issues. So I'm glad to have somebody on here that agrees with me on these issues, and I wish there was more of us.
Would you say it's just because of like maybe people in your life maybe have more conservative view of things than you do?
1000%.
It's hard, especially if you, I mean, if you grew up in the Midwest and like if you're
Yes.
in areas that aren't necessarily like bringing in people that look
Mhm.
different to you, then I think
Yep.
it's important to like get that experience somewhere else. And I guess like this kind of ties into my TikTok, and I don't know if that has to do with the next question, but like my
It literally
TikTok,
does.
we'll talk about that next. But like my TikTok has like helped me honestly like a lot with this.
Yes. No, that was something for my major of being a sports management major. I want to coach hopefully college basketball eventually.
You
I
will.
probably could have I probably could have gotten there even without the the college experience. I'm still in my last semester here, and I have taken classes where it's like, don't really know if I need to be doing this.
Mhm.
But when it comes to meeting different people and hearing different sides of people's stories and stuff, college has been phenomenal for that. And that's something that I don't think I was really prepared for coming from a um, small school. But that's something college is, I think, really good for, is hearing all these different people. And like the best man at my wedding is a Nigerian guy from England. Like
Mhm.
I would never have met him if I stayed in my
Yeah.
little circle here, you know?
Yes. Oh my God, the circle. I regret a lot. From like, oh my God. When I think of high school, I literally cringe. Like, of course, there were good moments, and like I love my friends that I have
Yes.
from high school, but it's like, girl, expand.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
So
anyway.
you mentioned TikTok. We've kind of been hinting at it. You've gone viral. There's no way to like beat around the bush here. You've gone viral on TikTok. I saw one of your videos months ago, and I looked back kind of reviewing before this interview, and you had like 12 million views on it. So
Yeah, that was crazy.
we had a video hit 130,000 views the other day, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So for somebody that's had a
But it
couple
is
videos,
cool. Like, it's
it
so
is.
cool. Like 130, like I'm like till this day when I'm like 20,000, I'm like, thank God.
Yes. So, but you had millions. How does that feel like? Um, I don't know. Kind of walk us through that, because not everybody gets that, experience.
I'd say like I think the first video that I ever post with the concept of like using international students' perspective.
I was gonna
Uh,
say, kind of for people that don't know who you are, kind of give a background of what
oh,
you do on
sure.
there.
Yeah. Some Vivi in the city. Oh, okay. So I would say my TikToks are very much like it started with getting the perspective of an international student going to an American college or a college in the United States. It's so funny when I say like America, American, like it triggers people on TikTok. I don't say America, one, because
Mhm.
I just hate saying that, but I do say American because that's what people from the United States are.
Exactly.
But
Yep.
anyways, yeah, anything you say on TikTok, people are gonna roast you.
Oh,
But
it's unreal.
it's
Yeah.
literally like I could like say like my name is this and like no, it's not. And I'm like, okay. But
Yep.
yeah, so I started with like that, like what is the weirdest thing about the US? Like you always like wonder, like could you imagine going to a different country and just like being immersed in this culture that you have like no idea what it is?
Hmm.
And like some of these students had never been to the US. So it started out with that, and then I graduated college, and then um I just kept going with the like, what's the hardest English word to pronounce? What's the weirdest thing about the US? Like, what's the biggest culture shock for you? And then I started incorporating my parents because I'm like, wait a
Mhm.
second, my parents are international. And like, my parents are actually like pretty funny
Yeah.
and annoyingly. And so I like started doing TikToks with them and then like incorporating like Brazilian people. And so I think my algorithm is a little confused because they're like, what are we targeting? Like, are we targeting Brazilian people, like international people in the US? But
Yeah.
like, that's who I am on TikTok.
Where did all this, you kind of maybe mentioned it a little bit there, but where did all this like come from? Like what made you think of this in the first place?
I started to hang out with a lot of international students this past fall. And like I said, like I went to Principia High School. We had international students there. My whole family is from Brazil. Like I'm like, you know what I mean? Like it's not like I'm like this American girl that has no like experience in another
Yeah.
culture. Like I've been around this and like for some reason it took me so long to put myself out there for other cultures and just like ask questions. And I feel like if we don't ask questions, how are we ever gonna know the answer to things?
Love that.
And I was like, dang, like I have so many international friends. Like, I wonder what's like weird about the
Hmm.
US and our
Hmm.
college system. And there's a lot. And they
Yeah.
think, there's a lot. And going back to like that regret thing that I talked about, well, I'm not gonna say regret because I don't have any regrets in life, but just growing points. I think
Hmm.
that it's so easy to stay in your friend group with people that look like you or share the same beliefs and culture as you and whatever. But I think the most beautiful part of life sometimes is like going up to someone who looks nothing like you and asking them about their life in a genuine way, not in like a I don't really know, like like just not
Yeah.
in a different way.
Hmm.
And so I think a lot of my friends started leaving Principia College one by one, my high school friends, and then they all graduated. And then I was like, why wasn't I friends with all of these international people sooner? Like, what was stopping me? And I got better at Portuguese, being friends with my Brazilian friends this fall. I got better at Spanish, which is not quite there, but it's getting better. And then that's like how it started with TikTok. I was like, let's just get their perspective. And then like that was the piece was putting myself in a position to hear their perspective.
I think you need to be reminded that you are reaching a lot of people. I know you're in New York, so you're in a much different setting than I am.
Yeah.
So you're around a lot of people. I need you to know though, because like my fiance showed me a video of yours, and I'm like, that's kind of the girl I'm interviewing coming
Oh,
up.
no,
So like
that's
you,
crazy.
yeah, you get around for sure. And 134, I think it's 134,000, right? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, yeah, 130, yeah, 134,000.
That's amazing.
And like it's my mom. Oh my God, my mom is literally like a little momager. Like but she's a good momager. Like she goes around and she's like, my daughter, yeah, this is her TikTok. My daughter does TikTok. And I'm like, Mom, like stop. Like
Put it away.
I don't talk about my like things. Like when I had a podcast, I didn't really tell people I had a podcast. I don't tell people I have TikTok. Like I don't know why. I think that's just like kind of who I am. And it's not like it's not necessarily being shy or like
Yeah.
humble, like people like I'm just humble. Like
Yeah.
no, like I just honestly like feel embarrassed sometimes telling people about what I do. And I'm like grateful that my mom has put like given me a lot of experiences honestly to like interview people because she's a lot more like out like she will talk to people a lot more than I will and I'm still extrovert. So imagine her.
Yes.
So she's like helped me like get certain interviews and like I hear her from my room at night and I just hear my voice. What's your name? Where are you from? And I'm like, Mom, turn that off. I was
Yeah.
like, turn that off. And it's like and she's just so maybe half of my views are my mom now that I'm thinking
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's awesome. You mentioned the podcast a couple times. It's a women's sports podcast, correct?
She did what? That's what it's called.
Have you thought about going back and redoing like doing it
M-
again?
Maybe, may I don't know. I mean, you
Because
know, it's work.
I listened to a couple and I enjoyed it. So that's what I'm saying. Like I don't know. I feel like that's something you should think about. It is a lot of work though. It is.
Yeah, it's just like editing and like getting people on. And if I'm doing TikTok too, like I'm not saying necessarily like it's like I haven't only done stuff for my own account. Like I've and hope I don't know when they're gonna post it, but like I've been like the content creator for other people's TikToks and I've been like interviewing other people and
Mhm.
like that takes like I'll be out in Times Square for like 5 hours and
Yeah,
it's exhausting,
for sure.
honestly. Like content creation is exhausting. And
Yes.
I didn't think it was until I got into it. And it's just hard like to I think I'm working on like what do I want to focus on in my life. Like I'm getting my master's in Spain in October in sports
Wow.
journalism and communication. So I'm gonna be in the sports world. I'll have a 4 month internship with Real
Yeah.
Madrid. I'll be there, but then also I'm gonna be
Wow.
creating my TikToks around like culture and language. So it's like, how can I combine the two? Or do I leave one behind and I keep going? So it's just like, I don't know. It's just a lot, I think. And it's not like I forgot about the podcast and like
Hmm.
women's sports, but I'm definitely like in a phase where I'm like fizzled out of it a
For
little bit.
sure. Kind of putting it on the back burner right now.
Yeah, but it has a place in my heart.
Yes. I got you. And I guess also going off that, do you have any goals now? With I mean, obviously you're doing a bunch of stuff in Spain now coming up, and it sounds like, and but with your TikTok and with your content creation, do you have any goals with that,
Um,
or something that you want to achieve with it?
I want to like keep growing. I think what I've realized, and you don't really know who you're affecting until people tell you how you're affecting them. And like, actually, one of the videos that I posted like 2 days ago, they're from a Brazilian bakery, and they had already like, when my mom went in to like buy something or something, she's like showing them my TikTok, and they're like, oh, I know that girl. Like, I watch her all the time. And I think she was like, it helped me like pronounce these English words. Like it helped
Wow.
me like with this new language that I'm learning. And I think I just want to keep finding ways to like impact people in a different way. Like it's like what gets views.
Mhm.
Like, you see people doing get ready with me's all the time on TikTok. And like, sure,
Yeah.
I've done some of those. And like, I try and talk about my content through get ready with me's, but
Yeah.
like, I want to keep finding new ways to like engage people, I guess
Okay.
is a goal of mine. And like, just keep growing my audience internationally. Like, I've had like my friends, like from school, they'll be like, oh, I went home to Argentina. One of my friends, he's like, his name's Luigi. Everyone loves him on TikTok. They're like, he's like, I went to this festival and like girls were like, oh my God, I've seen you on TikTok.
Mm.
So it's like I want to
Yeah.
keep going internationally in like an authentic in an authentic way.
Gotcha. No, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. As I mentioned earlier, my co-host cannot be here today, but he did put a couple questions down. I have to ask you one, and it's a very serious issue, Viv. Um, New
uh
York pizza or St. Louis pizza?
does St. Louis even have pizza? What, like Dewey's or something? Like,
I think he was meaning emos. I think that's what he was trying to.
okay, like
He
uh
even put in parentheses. It's a hard hitting question. So
New York. Oh my God, the other day I went out and like on the way back from the bar at 4 a.m. we like went to a pizza shop and we just sat there and I was like, I think I was in love with my pizza. I was like,
uh-huh.
this is why I'm alive.
Yeah.
So my answer is New
So
York.
I've never been to New York, and I've never had New York pizza. I've had Chicago deep dish. I like a breadier, doughier pizza,
Mhm.
but I'm a guy that tries everything. So I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to
you
find.
guys gotta
Is it
come to New
only
York.
Is it only a New York thing? Is there anywhere else I can
For
find
pizza,
New York pizza?
I
Is it
definitely go
just
to New
there?
York.
Okay. Okay.
Definitely. I mean, like I've never been to Chicago though, so that's like
Mhm.
unfair for me to say. I'm sure like Chicago has great pizza. But yeah, like
Yeah.
New York is just like every corner. Like you'll find different pizza, like different kinds of pizza everywhere. But I've just found that it's just like the cheapest pizza is the best here in New York. Somehow.
Gotcha.
Like
I
literally
could,
I got two pieces and a Coke for $4, which is like
wow.
almost a swipe on the subway.
Wow. I'll have to keep that in mind. The
Mhm.
cheapest pizza is the best pizza in New York. Okay. I'll
Yeah.
remember that.
People might come for that one, but whatever.
I do have some rapid questions for you here. I mentioned this to you, I believe, yesterday. Off the top of your head, first thing, the first question's kind of, I think you already answered it. Rapid question number one: who's your inspiration and why?
In life, my mother, but athletically, I really like I love Simone Biles and I love
Okay.
like Sean Johnson. So just like gymnasts that I like grew up watching.
Yeah. Okay. Um, road trip or flying?
Flying. I
Okay.
hate road trips.
I've never been on a flight before.
Stop.
I haven't. I know. I need to. It's not
Oh,
even. It's not even a fear thing. It's just I guess my family always did road trips growing up. Like I'm not afraid of it at all.
that's a
So
very like I don't want to say like American,
oh, it is.
but like I feel like that's a very American thing.
Oh, definitely is.
Like
Definitely is.
road trips, like yeah, just like we'll be like, "What are you doing over the weekend?" They're like, "Oh, we're going to our cabin this like somewhere," and I'm like, "Oh, like it's cool," but it's like it's so American. Like I love it.
Yes. Yes. What's the greatest lesson sports has taught you?
Um, I might need a second to think about this one.
Well, I was thinking we kind of talked for me. It's like the diversity and bringing people together.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about that, and I didn't know if you were going to use that as your answer or
Um,
because patience is a big one. Like
yeah,
trust in the process.
maybe like discipline
Okay.
and like showing up for yourself, showing up for others, um, like being at practice on time. I don't
Mhm.
know, like oh, it taught me a lot about leadership. Like that was
Okay.
huge when I was captain. That was hard actually, like being knowing how to lead when you have friends that are on your team. That was hard. So yeah, maybe like leadership, discipline.
Good. I like that. Are you a night out or a homebody? I think I know this answer. Being an extrovert.
In this phase of my life, I am a night out.
Okay. All right. And then the last one here: if you could play any sport professionally besides soccer, not if like physically, could you?
Okay.
If you wanted to do something, what would it be?
Maybe basketball.
Yes.
That'd be cool. Like playing at Madison Square Garden.
I saw
Not that
you posted Caitlin Clark the other day, and she
mhm,
is
going off.
just she's unbelievable. She's
Yeah.
unbelievable. Yeah, I like the basketball answer.
Yeah,
Um,
I think basketball. And then I guess like gymnastics, but like I already did that, but that like that realistically would have been what I would have done professionally, I
okay,
think,
nice.
if I could find.
So Viv, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out.
Thank you.
You sound like you're very busy and very busy all the time. So I'm glad you didn't have to do that boxing class tonight. And
Oh my
I'm
God.
glad.
My mom is always like, you have time to do these things, but you can't vacuum my floor. And I'm like, okay. So I vacuumed it this morning and I was like,
There you
Mom, I'm
go.
on a podcast, but I vacuumed the floor.
I love it. I love it. No, thank you so much. I personally loved hearing your story as well as some opinions and beliefs that you have that I agree with. That I don't get to talk to many people about that. So I thank you so much for joining, and we wish you obviously the best of luck moving forward.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for like obviously one, like asking me to come on and
Mm.
just like having your perspective around women's sports, and like there's not many people that do that. And just like I feel like I already said this, but like asking questions and like getting to know people. So like I appreciate that you like gave me this opportunity to like talk about who I am and like what I like and like why I do it. So yeah, I was excited. This is so fun.